Hi, everybody. Thank you for your time today. Today, I'm going to take you through some pointers to get through today's environment of virtual project management. Um, so, as the world has changed. Our new normal going forward is most of us are going to a hybrid work model, which includes coming to the office sometimes or working remotely sometimes. For some of us, it's remotely 100% of the time. So there is some form of remote work that's here to stay in the near and far future. And so I just wanted to share with you some tips on how to be the most effective in the remote environment. So, let's see, next slide. I thought I'd share some funny pictures of us working remotely. All right, so one of the project managers that I was working with was earlier last year. She was a little bit nervous about being able to manage projects remotely. She thought that keeping track of a project when everyone is in the office in one place is challenging enough, but now we need to do it just as effectively with, everybody off site. How the heck do I do this? So I wanted to spend today to show you 3 key tips how to adapt your project management approach. The first one is to amplify your communication and collaboration. I think most or all of you are project managers on here. So, I don't think any of these 3 pointers are new to you. We just need to amplify and enhance them going forward in order to be more effective from remotely. The second piece is enhanced scope management. This can't be stressed enough because, as you all know, scope does change throughout the project. And then lastly, this is also very important, is that we also need to enhance our stakeholders, management, and engagement. And I think this was also mentioned in one of the previous presentations. So let's go over the first one, amplify our communication and collaboration. Here, the key tip is that you really need to establish a regular cadence of communications. For structure communications, such as team meetings, I really hope that everybody embraces the video conferencing mode, but also do that with balance, because as you all have heard or known, there is such a thing as Zoom fatigue or video fatigue. So be very conscious of what type of meetings you're planning and whether or not it needs that the visual cues. Always have send out pre-send out an agenda, and always send out meeting recaps. And then the other piece with video meetings is that hold shorter meetings and more frequently. Also, establish a common live platform or channel to share and store information. The company, my employer, utilizes the Microsoft Teams, and I find that it's very easy to go in on a live platform to update documents, and people can see it live versus trying to figure out, which version do I have? Do I have the latest version? It just gets to be ineffective if the team members are not aware whether or not they have the latest news. And then if you can, if at all possible, default to transparency, because that really creates trust within your project team. And then lastly, as mentioned before, embrace technology. You also would want to establish unstructured communications. Utilize instant message for very quick less formal conversations. Um, what I found to be very helpful is to create time for non-work topics and for a little bit of social interaction. Since we're not in the office anymore, you kind of miss that human factor, where you're having those um, casual water cooler conversations. So what I found to be helpful is that if you leave a little bit of space in front of your meetings, just to, do a little chit chat, check in on everybody, say how they're doing, see how their kids are doing. It just kind of creates a little bit of a more relaxed atmosphere, and it enables your team members to know each other a little bit better. Again, getting back to that live channel to post things. I know my team and I, we've talked about, for instance, September is Hispanic Celebration Month, and we created a little channel where we can swap recipes, or um, just share pictures. I find that it's really helpful when you have that camaraderie between team members. All right. What's also important, and I think you all are project managers. If you haven't done this already, you understand the um, the thought behind it is that it really does help to establish rules of engagement. This is where, as a team, you would create and align on some ground rules and boundaries for your team members. And especially in a remote environment, it is more important than ever, especially if you have your team members across different time zones. So what you want to do is you want to establish some standard operating hours. Say one of you is on the East Coast, one of you is on the West Coast, somebody else is, on London time. You want to try to create a few hours where everybody's actually within their regular workday. That way, people don't feel like they need to be on 24/7, and it gives them a little bit um, of normalcy. Um, in meetings, as the project lead, please ensure that everybody has a chance to talk. In a remote environment, of course, that's even harder for those of us who are naturally quiet. So as a project manager, you want to kind of engage them a little bit more often than you normally would. Um, Also align on the response time to messages and emails. It could be 24 hours, it could be, within the week, depending on level of urgency. But if you set that expectation, then it helps the rest of the team communicate more effectively. Um, as mentioned before, help your team members know each other and know how to reach each other. Does someone prefer emails? Does another person prefer instant messages or texts? Everybody has a different style of communication. And then if issues come up, I highly encourage to have live conversations instead of trying to resolve a problem on email, and do that as much as possible. Of course, equally important, what really helps is also, help your team celebrate and recognize wins and milestones. You know, um, Again, in a virtual environment, you have to be a little bit more creative. You can have cookie parties or pizza parties, where you send some cookies to everybody's home, and you and open it up and enjoy together, in the virtual setting. Um, the little the little celebrations do really count. I know on some of the projects that I've been involved with, we'll have, our own casual Fridays where, everybody showed up with, flamingo shirts one day. It's kind of a secret joke. So within your project teams, you'll have little things like that. And it really helps alleviate some of the stress. Um, what I found to also be helpful in past projects is that, after the project is done, after you give everybody a little bit of time to rest up a little bit, do schedule some lessons learned. Go over what went well, what could have been done better. Did the team have the right tools? Are there other tools out there that we should consider? And then, how can we improve with the next project? And again, for some of us who had to convert to doing this virtually, this is more important than ever in today's environment. All right, the second tip is enhance your scope management. Now, there are no project managers on here that don't realize that in this environment, we just need to amp it up a little bit. I won't bore you going over, what you really need, what is in a scope management document. Um, I am reminding everybody to list out of scope items. Make sure that you also define what is not part of the project. What is also critical is to ensure understanding of the requirements from your stakeholders. Um, Definitely recognize scope creep. Changes to scope can happen, and changes to scope isn't a bad thing. It's just that when it does happen, everybody needs to come together and align on those scope changes, understand um, what the repercussions are or what the outcomes are, and then align to um, your new requirements or your new timing. And make sure that all of your stakeholders are on the same page. And then lastly, but also as equally important is that, you need to really ramp up your stakeholder management and engagement. And that's even harder in a virtual environment. This is something that I think, all of us understand, but we may not have the time to do. And I highly encourage that you really find the time to do this. And, this is, not something that you need to share with the whole team, but as a project manager, do a little bit of stakeholder analysis, identify your stakeholders, understand the relationships between your stakeholders and between the stakeholders and the actual project. Establish a stakeholder map, and I'll show you that in a couple seconds. And then also put together for your own self an analysis matrix, because that's going to help you um, find ways to engage them and kind of take them with you on your project journey. Right, here's an example of a stakeholder map that I sometimes use. A project or who will be receiving benefits or are affected by the project. Um, and as a project manager, what you like to do is understand, whether kind of think about whether or not the stakeholder is an advocate or supporter for this project, whether this person will be a neutral stakeholder, or sometimes, this stakeholder could be a blocker or a critic to your project. So it helps for you to kind of think through that and understand it, because then from there you will develop and figure out how to engage them going forward. Are we caught up on slides?
No, we can. Some of us can still see the one that says keeping track of a project when everyone is in the office. I think it was a fairly early one. I don't know whether it's worth you sort of taking the presentation down and putting it back up for us, maybe your end.
Okay, hang on.
Thank you.
Did that help?
Okay, yeah, it's moving through now. Yeah, there we go. It's moving through now quite. Obviously, a little bit quicker as we catch up, and I expect
Gosh,
eventually we'll end up on the.
I apologize. My
That's all right, don't
goodness.
worry. I think a few of us thought it might have been connection our end that was slow and we were waiting for it to catch up, but I thought if we can at least get a couple of your final
Okay.
slides, and of course we can invite people to share as well. So thank you.
Yes, yes, I can definitely do that afterwards. Okay, can you see the stakeholder map now?
Yeah, we're right on it.
Okay, all right. So, so this map will help you understand the perspective of the stakeholder, and that will help you in your communication with the stakeholder. And then I did not come up with this, so I can't take credit for it, but I found this chart to be very helpful for my own project management um, efforts. So take your list of your stakeholders, and as you can see on the left side of the screen, this is their level of influence and power, and then on the bottom is the interest level. So you, as a project manager, would want to concentrate a lot of your efforts in the key players in the top right-hand quadrant. These are the players who will have a lot of impact on the success of your project. You definitely want to engage with them on a very regular communication cadence. You definitely want for them to be involved in all decision makings, and you want to make sure that you are informing them. Um, this the next set of stakeholders that you would want to pay attention to are in the top left. Make sure that you engage them, you their needs, and if needed, try to increase their level of interest because their influence is so high. You really want to make sure that their needs are satisfied. Um, Over here on the right side bottom uh, quadrant, with these stakeholders, you definitely want to keep them informed. Um, they are potential supporters of your project. They may not have as much influence as the key players, but they potentially could um, get you to where you need to be. And then, of course, there are the stakeholders that are in the lower left quadrant. Um, do keep them in check, but if you don't copy them on every piece of your communications, it's not going to have such a big impact on your project. Um, Once in a while, you may be able to convert these folks into the right hand of the quadrant, which, of course, the more interest you have in your project and the more support you have, the more likely you will have a successful project.